Alrighty, here is my tier list for the 545 guns. 545 in general is not exceptional, but it's very good mid-wipe once you unlock BT from Prapper level 3 and complete the quest Punisher Part 4. When the weapons are fully modded, they look very similar to each other, so for clarity of the list, I have left the image as the way the weapon is when you get it from the trader. However, all these weapons have been purchased and fully modded, and they were tested with the best in slot parts. One thing to note with the AKS-74U, UN, and UB, I recommend using the gangster grip on them. However, to keep them the same with other weapons in the test, I used the angled boy grip. So 545 guns are very similar to each other. A lot of them take the same parts. They take the same magazines. Most of them have the same fire rate of 650. The only exception is the AK-105, which is 600. And of course the two semi-autos in this category. So I've prepared something to help us. Look at this graph. So anyways, here's a statistical breakdown of all the weapons in the category organized by recoil. As tempting as it would be to just slap down the letters for the tier list and call it a day, that doesn't tell the full story of these weapons, because the two at the top are semi-auto, so they're less effective. The AKS-74UB has a very unique spray pattern that makes it the best 545 in the category, even though it's statistically equivalent to the AKS-74U and UN, and the RPK appears to be the worst in the category. However, it's only bad because it has no waffle cone suppressor. If we lived in a Tarkov world without the waffle cone suppressor, the RPK would be statistically the best weapon in the category. So looking at more than just stats, I have bought and built these guns and used them in offline and online raids. So let's talk about what they're actually like to use. Starting with the AKS-74UB. After the recoil patch this wipe, this gun has become a delight to use. It is easily the best 545 in this category, and when I originally heard people talking about how good this weapon was, I did not believe them until I tried it out myself. I got level 3 mastery with it very quickly, and it became one of my favorite weapons in the entire game. The thing about the AKS-74UB that makes it different than the other mini AKs is it has a unique spray pattern. So the spray pattern of the AKS-74UB is different than the spray pattern of the AKS-74U and AKS-74UN. So the UB has its own unique spray pattern, and that's what makes it far better than the U and the UN, even though they are statistically equivalent. So the AKS-74UB goes into A rank. There was a strong debate for me if this should go into S rank. However, I think that it's an A rank weapon because, like every gun in this category, it feels very good when you're using BT ammo. However, when you try to go to the next tier of ammo, which is 545 BS ammo, BS ammo has a lot more recoil than BT, and that makes all the weapons across the board feel worse to use. So the 545 guns are really, really nice with BT, but once you upgrade to BS, they become a bit more wild. So because of that, I think all the 545 weapons suffer in terms of their ranking as far as their position in the game overall. So the AKS-74UB, it is the best 545 gun, but I don't believe that it's S rank. And it is better than the AK-74 and the AK-74N. It is better, and I think that's a little bit busted in terms of overall balance of the 545s, because I think the AK-74 and the AK-74N should be the best weapons in the category. However, they're not. The AKS-74UB is the best weapon in the category because of its unique spray pattern, which is very controllable and very friendly to use. If you've never used this gun this wipe, load it up with some BT ammo and give it a shot, because I was very pleased when I tried this weapon, and it very quickly became one of my favorite weapons in the game. This was a delight. This was a very exciting weapon that came out of nowhere for me, and it's really fun to use, so give it a shot. One negative of the UB when compared to the big boy AK is that the muzzle velocity is actually quite a bit less. This is not going to matter in most situations because you're going to be in close range or mid-range. However, when I was shooting at stuff that was very far away, I did notice the difference in travel time between the baby AK and the big boy AK. So that is something to notice, that the muzzle velocity is less. However, in most situations, it's not going to make an impact in your gameplay, but just something to be aware of. Next, let's talk about the sister AKs to the AKS-74UB, which is the AKS-74U and UN. Originally, I thought to put these into D tier because historically, these have always felt like they're below average. And for me, C rank represents the average. However, after the recoil patch, these guns actually do feel quite a bit better. I first noticed them feeling a little bit better during the Punisher quest when I actually had to use one of these to kill scavs on customs. I think the UB also works for that quest, but I was not aware of the UB being any good, so I used the U, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, previously these guns have felt like they were below average, so I wanted to put them into D rank, but after the recoil patch, I think these guys do represent pretty well the average. So they will be going into C rank. They both feel a little bit wild, they both feel a little bit loose. So I'm lumping these guns together because they're very similar, if not exactly the same. Of course, the N has the dovetail mount, but further than that, I have somehow convinced myself that the UN is worse than the U. Over many magazine sprays of testing, I have tried to disprove this to myself, that they are actually the same. But throughout all my testing, I am now convinced that the UN variant is actually the worst of the three. However, it's not worse enough to be put into a different tier category, but I think the UN version of this is the worst, and the U is the middle, and obviously the UB is the best. But yeah, these guns are very average. I'd say use the UB if you can. If the UB works for the quest, then there's no real reason to use these guns. Same parts, just these are less effective. And we're moving on. The AK-74 and the AK-74N. This is what I think should be the best AK in the category. The reason why this AK shines over the other AKs is because you can attach this Magpul Zhukov S stock, which is better than the other stock, and it only mounts to these AKs. It doesn't mount to the other AKs that shoot 5.45. Going from the AKS-74UB to these AKs feels a little bit jarring because you would expect these to handle better. However, immediately when you use them back to back, you can feel that they in fact actually handle worse. And that can feel a little bit surprising when you have the gun in hand and you're ready to shoot at a target. As far as differences between these two guns, obviously the N has the dovetail mount, but in terms of handling and in terms of recoil, I don't really notice a difference between these two. Whether you choose the 74 or the 74N, I think they both handle and feel pretty much exactly the same. I don't think there's any kind of unique or different spray pattern between them. If there is, it's extremely subtle to the point where I don't even notice it as a highly veteran FPS player. So, as far as long AKs, these are the best AKs in the category, and I think they should be better than the UB. However, in the current state of the game, they are not. That being said, these are great guns, so they are going into B tier. These are still really good AKs, and the fact that you can mount this special stock to them give them better stats than the other long AKs in the category. So, these guys are going into B rank. I think they should be A rank. However, in the current state of the game, they are definitely not better than the UB. So they are going into B rank, and yeah, these are the best long AKs that you can get in 545. The AK-74M. I am calling this the good 545 AK because it is very comparable to the last two AKs we were just looking at. However, because you cannot mount the Magpul stock on the rear of this, you can only mount the PT stock. This AK is statistically worse than the others. However, it is not worse by that much. It is still very comparable. Okay, so here we have on the left the AK-74N, as in, no, I will not make out with you. And on the right, we have the AK-74M, as in Mommy Milkers. However, I'll just be referring to them as Knight and Modern. So the Knight AK has higher ergonomics and lower recoil. Does that translate to being in raid, though? Does the Knight AK feel better than the Modern AK? Yes, it does, but only slightly. The difference between these two weapons is very subtle. However, hopefully this demonstration can show that there is in fact actually a difference. Also, there is an audio difference with the Modern AK. The Modern AK has a unique sound signature, so I think it sounds better, and it sounds like it's firing faster. But in reality, both guns are firing at the same speed. It just sounds like it's firing faster. So we're going to start with the Knight AK. And now the Modern AK. So as you can hear, the Modern does sound quite different than the Knight. However, in terms of their spray pattern and spray control, it's very similar. Let's run it back and do it again. I don't know how well that translates in the recording, but the Modern AK has a bit more of a wild spray to it. It definitely feels more loose. It doesn't feel as tight in terms of how to control it. But the difference is still very subtle when you compare them back to back. So with all that being said, I am placing the Modern AK into B rank. However, please be aware, please notice that the Knight AK, meaning the AK-74N, and the normal AK-74 are in fact better than the Modern AK, meaning the AK-74M. So those two guns are better, but they are being placed in the same category. It's because they are better, but the difference of how much better they are is still very subtle. So even though they are better, they're still like in the same tier. So that's why it's going into B rank with those guns as well. The AK-105. This can actually be kind of sweet and sour? I don't know if you'd call it. No, short and sweet. Of course I said it backwards. Okay, so making this sour and short, or short and sweet, something. The point is, the AK-105, I consider this the trash 5... The AK-105. This is another short barrel AK, similar like the AK-102. So because of that, we cannot fit the Troy handguard. We have to use the Zenitco handguard, which does let us use the Zenitco dust cover. Overall, this weapon has a large amount of recoil and a slower fire rate. Pretty much all the 5.45 guns are shooting at 650 RPM. The AK-105 shoots at 600. So it has a lot of recoil and it has a slow fire rate, so this is what I'm calling the trash 5.45 AK. I would say don't spend your money on it, don't waste your parts, just build a different 5.45 if you wish to have a 5.45 gun. This goes into E tier. I would say don't waste your time on this weapon. It is not good when compared to the other weapons in this category. The AKS-74 and the AKS-74N. As far as I can tell, these guns are the same in terms of recoil and handling, the only difference being the N has the dovetail mount. I consider this to be the sloppy 5.45 AK. It is usable, it's okay, but it's not great. If you're going to buy these parts, you should definitely put them on one of the guns I mentioned earlier. Obviously not the AK-105, but meaning something like the AK-74, the AK-74N, Night, or the AK-74M, Modern. Those would be far better choices than the AKS-74 or the AKS-74N. When comparing the AK-74 Modern, here on the left, compared to the AKS-74N on the right, you can see that ergonomically, it's -1 ergonomics. In terms of recoil, it's +1 vertical recoil and +1 horizontal recoil. So the difference between these two guns seems very, very small. However, when you're using the AKS-74 and the AKS-74N, they feel a lot more sloppy in terms of the spray pattern. So hopefully I can demonstrate that for you. Now the AKM to compare. So from that clip of firing the guns, you can see that they have more visual bounce while the bullets are still hitting the target. You, as the person using the weapon, you're experiencing more visual bounce and more camera recoil. That being said, these are still good, so they are going into C rank, because I actually do consider them to be about average, and I think they're usable, so into C rank they go. The RPK-16. Okay, so this is a weird one. The RPK is both very good and very bad, depending on what you want to do with it. So the RPK comes with two different barrel lengths. I absolutely think you should always go with the longer barrel. Obviously, if you can't buy it from a trader, it's not a big deal then. So, but the thing that's really weird and wild about the RPK is if you're going to use it loud, it's one of the best 5.45 guns in the game. But when you use it suppressed with a TGP suppressor, compared to any of these other guns with a TGP suppressor, the RPK becomes the best gun in this category. So it's a very strange one. If we lived in a Tarkov world where the waffle cone suppressor did not exist, the RPK would be suppressed the best statistical weapon in this category, and loud one of the best weapons in this category. I think when you compare it to the AK-74, the AK-74 beats it by like 1 vertical recoil. So the RPK is a weird one. It's both good and it's both bad. It's basically an extremely good budget 545. If you're looking for a cheap 545, it is definitely the best budget, because these other guns are very expensive, especially when you consider the waffle cone suppressor. What's the waffle cone going for right now? I know from the trader it's a lot. Okay, so waffle cone right now is about 109,000. From the trader, 138,000. Yeah, so the RPK is a really good budget 545 if you're going to not go for the waffle cone. If you want to bring out the best in any of these guns, though, you got to go for the waffle cone suppressor. So let's see how the RPK does on the range. Two conclusions that we can make by using the RPK and the AK-74N back to back. First conclusion that's important to make is that the RPK's spray pattern is unfriendly. Even if they are statistically similar, the RPK spray pattern does feel to be a little bit more exaggerated. However, the second thing, the waffle cone suppressor is unbelievably good, because the AK-74N with the TGP suppressor felt like a completely different gun in a completely different tier. So the fact that you cannot equip the waffle cone suppressor to the RPK is a big, big nerf, or a big negative to the RPK's potential performance. That being said, its strength is it is a very good budget 545. You can make it perform really well on little money, and that's the strength of it. Unfortunately, as a end game, end wipe kind of performance, it's very poor when compared to the other weapons in this category, so I am putting it in F rank. However, it seems like an unjustified F rank, because its purpose is not to be an end wipe weapon. Its purpose is to be a budget 545, and it excels at that purpose tremendously. So the RPK, even though I'm putting it in F rank, it's not that bad. Don't be discouraged from using it. It's good as a budget 545, but the fact that you can't put the waffle cone on it, it's just not competitive with these other weapons in terms of how tight the spray pattern becomes. The SAG AK-545 and the SAG AK-545 short. You can think of the long as being a worse TX-15. It does not shoot the shots as tight as a TX-15, and you can think of the short as being a better ADAR. So it is quite a bit more confidence inspiring than the ADAR, but it does feel more sloppy than the longer version. And the fact that it's more expensive too basically means if you're gonna purchase one, you should definitely buy the longer barrel version. So these are semi-automatic only, which is very detrimental if you're in any kind of close range situation. Also, the fact that you're shooting 545 is not the best, because the low penetration ammos, well, they don't penetrate. And the high penetration ammos, they don't do enough damage to actually kill. Like, they don't do enough flesh damage. So it's a very strange cartridge to be shooting in semi-automatic. 545 is much better as a spray it in that direction kind of a cartridge. However, if you do want your, I guess, marksman style semi-auto, these are in the game. They're okay. They're not that great. Let's spam them real quick at the range so you can see what I'm talking about, but they're not like too impressive. Like I said, the long one is better, but it's not like amazing. So because of the semi-auto fire rate, it's pretty easy to keep the shots on target. So that is a benefit, that you can keep them on target, and it's, you know, pretty easy to do. But for a lot of situations, semi-auto with an ineffective round like 5.45, it's not going to work to your favor. So the long barrel AK 5.45, I am putting it in D tier, because I think it is below average because it does not have a full auto function. It's semi-auto only. And I am putting the short in E tier. I'm not 100% sure on this. I feel like the short is worse just because of the fact that it is more expensive. And I do think that the longer is better, but I don't really know if they are truly in different tiers, because the long feels like a worse TX15. The short feels like a better ADAR. So the tier distance between them, the gap is not as clearly defined. However, this is what I'm choosing to put them as today. Maybe I'll change my mind next time I do a video like this, but for now, that's where they go. And I think that wraps up the tier list.